Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Transit Report on Monday, March 11th, 2024. And we're looking at the chart for today at noon. All of my charts are run for noon Mountain Standard Time. But we're actually going to go backwards a little bit. I just want to bring a little background into the new moon in Pisces that we had yesterday, early in the morning. It was at 2 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, which was funny because that's actually right when the time changed to 3 a.m. So it was just sort of funny that in this world of Pisces that we're in right now, even the construct of time is a little fuzzy. But let me do this. I want to show a bit of a pattern I've noticed. I'm actually going to back up to the Rave New Year. Now, back at the Rave New Year on our report for that, we were talking about how much individual circuitry was being activated for the Rave New Year chart. There were 9 out of 13 activations in individual circuitry, and the only channel defined in the body graph on the left was the channel of the perfected form. Design of survival. And so we can see that the undercurrent this year is carrying such an individual frequency. This idea of higher knowing, inner truth, inspiration is a large part of the theme of the year. Now, as we go forward, I want to show you the lunations since the Rave New Year. So after the Rave New Year, we had a full moon in Leo just a few days after the Rave New Year. We still had the channel of the perfected form. Saturn had been in gate 55 for a very long time. It did its full retrograde movement there. And Uranus in 23. As we move to the next new moon that we had in Aquarius, the sun and moon were in gate 49, but we can see that the only channel defined was the channel of awareness, a design of a thinker. So another individual channel for that new moon. Then we had our full moon in Virgo, and although the moon was in gate 59, that had the sun in gate 55, again, highlighting individual circuitry. Now that brings us up to the new moon in Pisces yesterday, which happened in gate 22, line 4. So again, this strong theme of individual activations is certainly part of the overall weather we're experiencing right now. And of course, we're experiencing it in this sign of Pisces. Now, we did a full moon talk with Brandy and I. If you want to check that out, we went into much deeper. I just want to pull out some highlights from this new moon yesterday. We could see that it took place in gate 22, so the sun and the moon were at 20 degrees Pisces. And we can see that it's situated right between Saturn, make it real Saturn, the hard edges and limitations of 3D life on Earth here. And on the other side, we had Neptune, the planet of imagination and make it anything. So we can really see from just the planets in Pisces, this configuration can feel so dualistic. Of course, Neptune rules Pisces. And so it sort of has the upper hand in this situation. But with Saturn on the other bookend here, we feel like we're sort of in the midst of what might be possible, could be possible, and tremendously emotional, of course, because not only are we in the world of Pisces, but we're in the solar plexus. And just as a reminder, I want to mention, because we have all these planets bunched up here on the left side of the astrological wheel. I mean, if we look at Pluto, which is just barely in the sign of Aquarius right now, and Uranus down here approaching the latter portion of Taurus, we have all of the planets within 120 degrees. And what's happening is once a planet goes through gate 13, which we can think of as like a master gate for the solar plexus, because after gate 13, we're in 49. Then after that comes gate 30, then 55, then 37, right? And we'd have a quick jump up to gate 63, which we're going to be talking about more, but then back into gate 22 and gate 36. So the only gate that's not in this section of the wheel that's part of the solar plexus is gate 6. But because gate 6 is the polarity to 36, all of the gates in the solar plexus are getting tremendous activation right now. And we'll be talking about 36 and 6 in just a few moments because that's where the sun is heading. So, but I mention that because we've had Mercury already make that full progression, and we have the sun and the moon heading through these gates, and of course, Saturn, and then Venus and Mars. So all of these solar plexus gates are getting hit by the majority of the planets in the sky. So just something to keep in the background of our mind here as we go through the specifics. The other significant thing that was taking place during this emotional new moon in Pisces was that Mars on Saturday was in an exact square to Uranus here in Taurus. So on the new moon, we had Mars in gate 49 and Uranus in that gate 23. Now, when we think about the astrological aspect of a square between the god of war and the energy of Mars, lined up in this dynamic frequency with Uranus in gate 23, Uranus bringing that unstoppable, sudden, unusual, out of nowhere. This is a incredibly significant aspect. I mean, it's sort of, again, like lightning or something might have to break, or a breakthrough, or maybe a breakdown that leads to a breakthrough. But that's a very dynamic energy that was happening. And the release point between Mars and Uranus and the new moon was actually the apex here at the 20 degrees where the sun and the moon are. So, you know, I was contemplating this at the new moon, and it's like with that Mars Uranus, it's almost like an explosion of some sort, or a sudden, abrupt, out of nowhere event, but it's all happening in the ocean. It's like underwater. It's like an underwater explosion. Or I think of one of those oil rigs where the explosion happens underwater, and it's almost like there's fire coming out until the water can douse it. But certainly just, if nothing else, to say that, you know, this was a very emotional new moon. And that's going to be part of the theme of this week. You know, we are going to be living inside of the solar plexus world right now. And I'll keep coming back to that. I just really wanted to set the foundation as we go into the chart for Monday, how potent that was. And of course, as we look at the body graph, we have the channel of initiation. And that's happening because we still have the north node in gate 51, south node in gate 57, but Mercury moved into that gate 25 in time for the new moon. Now we can see that gate 25 is where we move from Pisces to Aries. And at the moment of the new moon, Mercury had just got into Aries a few hours prior to that. And I want to say about Mercury, because this week Mercury is going to be moving through gate 17 for much of the week. It is again in Aries, and it has a very different frequency and flavor having come out of Pisces. You know, when Mercury was in Pisces, it was not only in its fall, but it was in its detriment. So it's really challenged. Mercury loves details and being analytical and communicating. And in that watery world of Pisces, it's pretty challenging for Mercury to communicate. Typically, best communication is through maybe artistic expression or through some other medium. But now that Mercury has gotten into Aries, we have a very different situation here, right? We're in cardinal fire. It's ruled by Mars. And so Mercury is ready to talk now in some way, right? It may have something to say about this experience that it's gone through after it's been through all of these gates we mentioned in the solar plexus, but a very different quality coming from Mercury at the time of that new moon, and all of that energy from the Mars-Uranus square. And then again, that moon being sandwiched right in the middle between Saturn and Neptune. So as we kick off this lunar month yesterday, it just is really having that Piscean quality. And what I would share here, that's part of the theme of the week, I think, is really sinking into what these emotions are. Again, whether or not you have a defined solar plexus or undefined solar plexus, it's all about our personal authority and being grounded in that, because we can really get swept away here. It's just, we're going somewhere. I mean, all the planets are moving forward, but yet it's so watery and so imaginary, and the illusions and the delusions, they're so potent right now. It can really give a sense of unease. I mean, I have the image in my head of being on a sailboat or a ship in the middle of the ocean in a storm at night. You know, it's like we have a navigation where we know we're heading somewhere, but it's very difficult to know where that might be right now. We're sort of having to just stay focused and grounded in the moment to do the tasks that need to be done. And I think that could be really supportive this week in these waves of emotions in Pisces, is to continue with a grounding practice and to really just let them wash over us. I mean, they're there. If it's they're around us, coming to us from other people and inside of us through all these activations. I mean, we can look at the solar plexus over here and see 5 of those gates activated. I think it's important. I share this from my experience with my defined solar plexus. It's not about avoidance, right? Avoidance only can make things worse. It's about being with the emotion, finding a safe, creative outlet to express them, whether that means crying it out, you know, or beating the pillow in the bedroom. But there's, you know, to just be with it, which can be very scary. This can be very challenging at first because we all want to be happy and feel better and fill our days up with things that distract us from the difficult parts. But I just feel like that's not supportive right now. You know, we're going to have a very different quality once these planets, and particularly the sun, move into Aries, when we have the spring equinox coming up in just over a week here, or a little over a week. You know, we'll be in different territory. But I think if we can be patient right now and be present, there are things percolating in the world of Pisces, you know, the sign of dissolution and evolution. It's not an ending, because all endings are beginnings. Again, we're just caught up in this whirlpool of emotions right now, trying to make sense of the 3D world and our imagination and intentions for the future. And it's a bit murky, to say the least. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and move into the chart for today. And so again, this is less than 24 hours later, because the new moon chart was for 3 a.m. Sunday morning. And here we're looking at Monday at noon. Most of the chart is fairly similar. We still have the channel of initiation. The significant move is that Jupiter, which was in gate 24 for a very long time, Jupiter did its entire retrograde phase inside of gate 24. And as of Monday, it has moved into gate 2, line 1. This is, you know, feels like a really welcome aspect for this current time period. With all of this watery emotion, you know, that we're rising and falling on, having the planet of expansion, the benevolence of Jupiter, often good fortune, but more than anything, expansion. It's bringing this frequency to gate 2, the gate of higher knowing, the most receptive gate in the wheel. And so I feel like this is really something for myself that I just want to tune into. You know, when we think about that magnetic monopole, it is what's attracting all of life to us. Some situations we find obviously extremely challenging, you know, from this Pluto we've had in gate 60 for so long now. It's now at line 6, but this limitation, whatever that may mean to anyone, but, you know, that it's speaking to us that there's something to be uncovered here. Whatever we may consider to be our greatest limitation or insecurity, fear, doubt, this is part of the backdrop here with Pluto offering its power to uncover hidden truths within that experience of the limitation. And I think, again, Jupiter being in that center column in gate 2 can be very supportive. And it's in Taurus, which is about fixed earth and being grounded in that. So I really feel like that's a wonderful place to keep our awareness and our intention for the week. We can also see, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and move to Tuesday here, and this will come a little more. What's going to happen on Monday night? Let me mention it here, and then we'll see it in the next chart as well. We can see that the moon here, which has moved into gate 21 on Monday, over the course of Monday evening, it's going to conjunct the north node and be opposite the south node. So it's going to conjunct the nodal axis, and it's also going to conjunct Chiron. Now, the north node in Chiron has been a big part of my reports for weeks now, because it was indicating in gate 51 in this conjunction of Chiron that there could be some opportunity for healing, self-healing, or possibly forgiveness in a situation. But that's been a very strong theme in terms of our direction forward, that this self-healing, and I say self because it's in an individual channel. There's something there to be uncovered, and the moon is going to be stimulating that over the course of Monday night. And you can see how the moon is already by noon on Tuesday has moved past that conjunction. And we can see, and I'm sorry, I meant to be on Tuesday. There's Tuesday. Yeah, the moon moved past this conjunction with Chiron and the north node. And we can see here the sun on tomorrow for me, which is Tuesday, the sun is moving into gate 36 and the earth in gate 36. So again, the world of Pisces, the world of the solar plexus, gate 36, the gate of crisis, and called the darkening of the light. It really speaks to the experiential way. This is a primary manifesting channel, the gate 36. This is the expression of the emotional energy to go through this new experience. Hopefully, by the end of it, we'll have progress and growth and maturity, but there's definitely some friction involved. But we can know from that grounding in the earth and gate 6 that the fundamental law of progress is that growth does not, it requires friction. Growth, the friction offers the opportunity for growth, and hopefully gate 35, the gate of progress, will be the result of that. And so just to highlight that that's really accentuating this energy. And as we see what's happening here, the sun is moving towards its conjunction with Neptune. Now, that will be exact on Sunday of this week, so I'll be coming back to that again. But just again, from a broad observation, looking at this Neptune, you can see that it's right at the heart of this configuration, right? It's Pluto at 1 degree Aquarius and Uranus at 19 degrees Taurus. That Neptune, it's right in the middle. So again, just to emphasize this Neptunian situation we're in right now, I just feel like it's making things unclear. It just can bring this degree of uncertainty. So I think it's time to hold fast. Pisces is where this mutation and evolution takes place. And when I say that word again, I think of Pluto again in gate 60 here. That something is percolating deep within ourselves, again, due to all that individual circuitry that's being highlighted as we go through the lunar cycles. Wonderful time to be connecting with our own personal higher truth and inspiration. The other thing happening on Tuesday is that Mercury, which, as I mentioned, has moved into gate 17 for this week, it is in an exact semi-square to that Uranus in gate 23. Well, as I mentioned, Mercury's ready to talk here in Aries. It can be very impulsive and talk really fast, or maybe over talk, just to know that fiery energy that Mercury's in right now, it has something to say. And this half square, this very dynamic energy and frequency with gate 23. And so when we look at Mars in gate 17 and Uranus in gate 23, and this half square that those two gates form, we can see that, whatever our unique individual creative voice of self-expression may be, it can be at odds with logical opinions. It may not make sense based on whatever our upbringing or our current community may think, but there's a bit of a challenge here, and of course Mercury's going to want to talk about it. Hopefully, it could be combative. Aries being the sign of Mars, it's pretty volatile in that sense. But just to be aware that there's something happening here on Tuesday as a result of that aspect. And we can also see another change that happens on Tuesday is that Venus, working its way through the solar plexus, is now in gate 55. And, we had Saturn there for many months, and now we have Venus there fairly briefly. Venus is moving forward and quite rapidly. But Venus in gate 55, that really feels like it can be quite beautiful. I mean, Venus being the planet of love and harmony and aesthetics, what we really want in life, this balance of love and beauty. It's in the volatile gate of 55, the gate of abundance and emotional spirit. So on the one hand, that wave can really fluctuate how Venus can operate here. She almost can have somewhat of a mystical, beautiful attraction. But on the flip side of that, it could be quite spiteful and upset and hurt feelings in a sense. So Venus, gate 55, and she is one astrological sign away from Pluto. See, 1 degree Aquarius for Pluto and 1 degree Pisces for Venus. We call this a semi-sextile. It's 30 degrees apart. And even though it's a semi-sextile, it's generally not a soft frequency. When planets are exactly one sign apart, they're right next to each other in terms of signs. So it's like we know somebody's there, but we're both focused to the center of the wheel. And so the communication, there's not really a reference point. So this aspect can be somewhat frictional in that sense. There's a breakdown in communication. And so when we think about this 55 being semi-sextile to gate 60, this limitation is having some interference with our feeling of emotional abundance and emotional spirit. There's again, a bit of a frictional thing here. So when we join all this together on Tuesday, seeing the the Mercury in the sign of Mars and a half square to Uranus in gate 23, and then Venus in the 55 and a semi-sextile to Pluto, just some very dynamic activity going on, but it's underneath the surface of the water. This Saturn, Sun, Neptune in Pisces, really, again, just bringing the emotional fuzziness. It's not clear. It's like we may feel it underneath the surface, but we're not sure what to do with it. So there again, I think it's just a matter of aligning with the pattern, not only following our personal authority, of course. I mean, as you all know, everything I talk about relies, when we're talking transits, we want to rely, not all transits are necessarily for us in that sense. It doesn't mean we have to necessarily act or do anything. That all comes back to one's personal authority. But certainly we can see that this is the atmosphere we're living in right now. That's some very dynamic tensions that are very concerned with who am I? What am I doing right now in this planet with all of the turmoil? I mean, it's like watching the news right now. It can easily promote a sense of overwhelm. It's just one calamity, catastrophe after the other. And yet here we are with the transits asking us, stimulating us, what is my voice right now? Why am I alive? What can I do? What we can do is within our sphere, right? And so I just want to support everyone to recognize that even though these waves of emotions can promote a sense of overwhelm, what we can do is go inward, right? We can be in the silence in that sense and listen for these emotions. We know that with the solar plexus, and again, I'm speaking from it like from a defined solar plexus, is that as it goes through the wave, it's gaining perspective, right? We get high end perspectives and low end perspectives. And the low end, which is so uncomfortable at times, but yet it's half of the equation. And so as we're riding these intense waves of Pisces during this period, to embrace all aspects of it. When we're in the low end or we're experiencing it from another person, there's something to be learned. There's something to hopefully understand with time. And I think that patience and being willing to be present to whatever our emotions are and wherever they're coming from, if you're undefined and that's influencing your feelings, whatever's going on there is presence right now. I think that, as we move out of this current weather that we're in, by the time we get to April, we're going to have our eclipse season, very important. And I think maybe that might be a window of opportunity to see where all this energy is taking us. And we're also going to have Jupiter, which is heading towards its conjunction with Uranus. That's going to happen on April 20th. And we're also going to have a nodal shift on May 10th. So between this week and the first part of May, somewhere in there, due to the eclipses and that conjunction, maybe we'll get a more glimpse of kind of where this is going. But right now, it certainly feels like we are in the thralls of the journey across the ocean. And so that's where I think grounding and presence can be really supportive with these dynamic energies. All right, so there's Tuesday. Let's go ahead and move into Wednesday. Now, when we get to Wednesday, Saturn is the big movement here on Wednesday. Saturn is moving into gate 63, as we can see here. This is it's the one break in the middle of all these solar plexus gates, right? From 49 till we finish 36, but we have this interesting jump here up to the head center, the pressure to doubt. And so Saturn in 63 now. And here's where, we're still in Pisces, right? And we have Venus, Saturn, Sun, Neptune, all in Pisces. But Saturn, the planet of structure, limitations, rigidity, Saturn always is reminding us we live in a 3D world. We can be mystical and spiritual and so forth, but it wants to bring structure. And here Saturn is going to take that energy to gate 63. It's really going to want to question what's going on. Is it making sense? And that, due to all the water in this chart and these rather intense aspects I've just talked about, that could be a little mental anxiety inducing, I would say. But again, to appreciate and accept the importance of that 63's location, it's I've mentioned in previous reports, it's so interesting, I think, that we would have a logical pressure to doubt in the world of Pisces. It really speaks to the mystical nature of life itself. I mean, as soon as we establish one truth, all of a sudden we're disproving it, right? It's just like the universe is expanding, our understanding of the universe is expanding, but yet we still don't have all the details. And so I think that Saturn being in gate 63 is wanting to bring some stability, but it's in Pisces. So we'll just have to recognize it for what it's for and see what information may come from there. Also, on Wednesday, we can see that the moon is also heading towards its conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus, and bringing its emotional quality to gate 2 and gate 23. And I think that Jupiter really a good reference point for us this week. Okay, so we get to Thursday, and what we can see happening here is that Mercury, which is still in gate 17, it's in the final 6 line here, but it's now forming a half square to that Mars, right? So we can see these half squares that Mercury's forming from this gate of opinions. Yeah, it's just really challenging the logical side of ourselves. I mean, how do we deal with logical opinions when we have this unbelievable lineup here? Look at this. And we can see, as I mentioned, that Sun, this background frequency of the Sun-Neptune conjunction, it's building all week long. And so what a wonderful time to really have your things that move you creatively, whatever it is, anything from the thing I always say is walks in nature, that works for me. But if it's playing your music or working with things that make you feel individually creative, things that touch on your inspiration, I really think those can be so supportive this week. This Mercury in gate 17 is in a half square to Mars in gate 49. Again, this emotional gate of principles, a rejection and acceptance, trying to establish the bonds of sensitivity, is in a very dynamic conversation with our logical, opinion-oriented mind. This is where we can get lost in the Piscean waves of emotions and walk out on something, a job or a relationship, or possibly overcommit and accept too quickly. It's just really hard to see these challenging aspects while it's covered with the watery emotion of Pisces here. And we can see the moon is in a sextile on Thursday with the Sun and Neptune. Again, adding its emotional quality, right? It's at this moment, and again, this will be a fast-moving aspect since the moon moves so quickly every day, but certainly during the midday hours, that emotional quality of gate 8 contribution. What is my contribution going to be? You know, I've got this pressure from the 60 and the Uranus stimulating my creative voice. And here the moon is driving that emotional quality as well, saying, yeah, but what could this mean? What is possible? But I think that's such a great question for all of us to relax into that watery world of possibilities, right? And whenever we're experiencing the opposite of that, which is the overwhelm, you know, it's just too much. What do I do with all this? To go inward right now. This is really the pattern here while we're in this Pisces. Once we get past that spring equinox, we'll be moving forward with cardinal fire. Maybe at that point, there'll be some times where we can get some clarity here, but a little challenging, I feel, as we move day to day and see this Piscean energy at work, and particularly that sun and that building energy of this conjunction. Okay, when we get to Friday, we can see Mercury changes gates. It's going to leave that gate 17 and move into gate 21. And also on Friday, we have these interesting septiles, which I only mention these when they're really strong. And of course, when you look at the aspects in the wheel, there's not many there. And the ones that are very light. So the only ones really jumping out are these septiles. And we have Mars septile the North Node. All right. And then we have Pluto in a septile to Jupiter. Now, septiles, the one-word keynote for those is mystical. Something may come through. And I think, you know, I think the way these might work, we often can only tell when we look back at an experience to see the transit and be like, well, was there a knowing or something mystical, something supportive may come through? I think it's really a result on how we're handling all this emotional activity. You know, when we're following our authority, being in alignment, being centered within our body, that's when these septiles have these unique opportunities. You know, in a sense, they may be like some sort of breakthrough. You know, this driving energy of Mars touching on that North Node Chiron conjunction. There's something we may see sometimes the fruits of the healing process that we've engaged on, that there can be some unusual support that may come through in that way. So we'll see what happens with those septiles, and you'll see that it builds. You know, we're on Friday. You'll see as I go through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that septile there gets much stronger over the next couple days. Saturday, we can see this channel of the money line jump out. That's because the moon has moved into gate 45. So that moon will be out of gate 45 by early afternoon on Saturday. So that channel is in effect really from the early morning hours till around mid-afternoon on Saturday. But again, what we look here is see that, wow, we're one day away from this exact conjunction here. And we're also having this Venus approaching Saturn. So this storyline, as you can see it's really building as these conjunctions move closer, the frequency and the vibrational quality does go up. And so with Venus, it has moved into gate 37, right? After being in gate 55, Mars has moved over to the gate 30, okay? And both the Sun and Neptune have been in 36, and we'll see them both in line 6 by the time we get to Sunday. And with that, okay, when we get to Sunday, let's take a look here. So we see the moon has moved into Cancer. So one thing I didn't mention, but as it moved through Gemini on the previous couple of days, the moon would have been squaring all of the planets in Pisces. So again, just adding another layer of this emotional stimulation. And then after all those squares, we can see on Sunday, it moves into Cancer, which is where it's in its home sign. But again, a very watery nature that is forming a trine with Venus. And over the next couple days into the early part of next week, it'll now be trining all those planets in Pisces. We can see that finally, as I've been talking about it, that Sun-Neptune conjunction is exact. And yeah, it's like not only are we already in this emotional quality from the new moon on Sunday, but for the entire week, that Neptune-Sun conjunction continues to grow in the gate of crisis. Just want to encourage everyone to use your tools, use your authority, right? There are things we can uncover right now. Pluto being in that gate 60 and the aspects that have formed this week, there is evolution internally happening within our individual natures, if you will. All those individual gates we've had stimulated for these past couple of months. And as we go forward, I just want to highlight something that I'll be talking more about in my future reports, is that the Sun and then Venus and Mars and eventually Saturn and Neptune, they're all heading for gate 25, right? Now, I mentioned we're going to have a nodal shift from gate 51. Now, the North Node will leave gate 51 in the early part of May. I think it's May 10th. But between now and May 10th, all of those planets are going to transit gate 25. I mean, this channel of initiation is getting ready to be lit up like the 4th of July. So Mercury has already done it this week, as I talked about. It was the first planet. And again, that's a lot of planets between Mercury, Sun, Neptune, Saturn, Venus, Mars, all within the next month and a half, meeting up with the North Node in the channel of initiation. And so that's why I really feel that right now it's about finding inner equanimity, tranquility amidst these waves, because once these planets start transitioning into Aries, not only do we get the cardinal fire energy of let's go, let's move, it's going to be in this initiation. And so it really does feel like an initiation into the world of our solar plexus right now. Quite intense. And so, again, just encourage everyone to use your tools. Whenever we're experiencing that solar plexus overwhelm, is to come back to center, come back to home base. And again, I think Jupiter, so supportive right now to sink into the receptivity of our higher self and our higher knowing. These can be an area of support and solid ground for us as we move through this tremendously emotional period, knowing that these initiations are coming, right? And then once we finally get into May, all those planets will have moved through that gate 25. We'll have a nodal shift. And so we'll just have to see where we are there. But I think it's important to kind of recognize, to bring that awareness into where can I go right now? We want to be in our emotions, present to our emotions, not overreacting, not underacting, just being centered and solid. And I think that can provide so much support as we all try to find emotional clarity during this period. And with that, I think that concludes everything I had to share. I'm going to take a breath. I see there's some comments. I'll look at those. And anyone that would like to share, please come forward. Any comments or questions? Love to hear from you.
Hey, I wanted hi.
Hi, Shango.
I wanted to just share very briefly how crazy and emotional it is at work. Lots of lies, sabotage. Things are moving very fast. And yeah, it's just, I have never seen something, such heightened emotions and situations like for the past 2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, that was my share.
Yeah, thank you, Shango, and I appreciate you speaking as well. Love hearing from you, and I agree. Right, that's why following transits can be a bit awareness inducing, right? And at least it gives us a framework, right? I think it helps with our awareness just to, I see, okay, well, I can look at my chart, I can see the transits, I'm being stimulated here. Doesn't mean that we need to do anything about it, but it certainly can bring some emotional fortitude, I guess, if you will. We are in a very dynamic time right now. So not only to be kind and self-nurture ourselves, but to offer that to our loved ones, right? To reach out right now. Again, that key master gate to the solar plexus is gate 13, right? The role of openness and interaction with others, being line one, being empathetic for each other. Wow, can that be a gift right now? People are going through a lot. Not obviously when we look at the world, I mean, millions of people are struggling for food and water at this very moment. That is overwhelming to even that we're having that happen. But even locally, one of my favorite astrologers always says, think cosmically, but act locally. What we can do in our own sphere right now to take care of ourselves and those in our community could be a wonderful outreach right now. But thank you, Shango. Would anyone else like to share anything? And I see Rachel. Yeah, Mercury had those conjunctions with Neptune and the Sun. Of course, I have the Sunday chart up. You can see that it's going to be conjuncting the North Node and Chiron as we roll into Monday, Tuesday of next week. So just really emphasizing again that Chiron. I mean, if anyone has anything that you sense may need some review from the past in terms of healing, you have the support of the transits right now. It is encouraging that, and in some cases, possibly demanding that. And Pluto, as challenging as it can be, it is the Lord of the underworld. It will strip our ego away like taking paint off, right? But it's here to let our soul emerge and shine on this incarnation cross. And so it's just urging us to go there, really it feels like to go in that dark cave, maybe the one we've avoided for very long. It's been scary, but yet sometimes that's the dark space we need to go to. And that's where I was saying the things about being present to the emotions, particularly the ones that are so uncomfortable, to try to hold space for yourself there in that volatility is very, after it's over, soothing and healing, and it's allowing it to express. So certainly a supportive practice, I think. Ross said, don't accept conditioning from anything, even the transits. Well, that's true. I mean, right? I mean, it's all about authority, but yet to remember, it's not about ignoring transits, at least from my perspective. I love following transits. It creates the awareness, right? Because we're all experiencing this weather, but how is it hitting our chart? And how it does that sets up the pattern that is for our timing, right? So much about transits helps us understand timing. So yeah, nothing to be feared. They're here to support us. I mean, that's in my work, that's what I have found, is that as challenging as some of them may be, they happen exactly at the moment in time that we need them to happen so that we can discover who we are. But certainly, yeah, we all want to be following authority. That is the safe passage, I would say, during these turbulent times, particularly with the Sun in Gate 36 and Neptune. Thank you for those comments. Would anyone else like to share anything before we wrap it up?
I will. It's
Hi,
Julie.
Julie.
Hi. Thank you. The whole time you're talking, all I kept hearing was, I need brandy. I need brandy. All this solar plexus stuff. I need brandy, brandy, brandy. And so I have a couple of questions. I feel sometimes like I experience these reports before they happen. Is that like, is there wiggle room around all of this stuff? Like, I feel like can we sense, I don't know, is it sensing it before it's happening, going through it before it's happening?
Well, yes. And the reason for that, Julie, is when I am speaking to an aspect, I'm generally speaking to it when it's at its apex. Because all of the transits, say, as I mentioned, like that Neptune-Sun conjunction, there's some subjective judgment on when you would say something is conjunct. Generally, astrologers will use anything within 10 degrees, which is pretty wide, right? So from the moment that it's 10 degrees away and as it closes to being exact at 0, there's a building of pressure. So all of these transits, and there's so many, of course, I'm only pulling out the ones that are most significant because all of them are aspecting all of them at all times, right? So what I try to do is parcel out a pattern, parcel out the main themes of what we may be seeing happening through the transits. But of course, there is the building, there's the apex, and then there's the dissipation. So certainly you could be tuned in to something like you're sharing. You're feeling it before I've even spoken about it because it
Yeah.
hasn't reached the apex yet.
And I'm like, I hope it's not coming back again. So it's been really interesting. And then I don't know, I'm curious for you being emotionally defined and going through all of the solar plexus gates that we're going through, how does somebody that's undefined support you the best? Like, this is tricky. It's painful. And I feel like, because of these reports and the awareness of what's going on and doing the things that you recommend with being creative, being out in nature, grounding, all that kind of stuff, getting to that place of okay, I got this, and then just getting pulled back into the wave. And it's just like, so that dynamic is so tricky, which is why I'm like, I need Brandy. But for you on the other side, maybe there's something that you can say that would shed some light for how to support what's going on in you, because we experience you as always being even keeled and loving and joyful and positive. But so I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comments and your question. And I think you're right. I mean, I love that you mentioned Brandy because she has so many beautiful tools and modalities to center you and to ground you, right? And that is what is so supportive right now. Whatever it is, from Qigong to meditation to anything that will put someone there, what a great place to go right now. Now, on your question about my solar plexus, so as we've talked about, I do have a defined solar plexus, and it's rather defined. I have the 59.6, the 36.35, I have gate 22. And I've been observing my emotional wave for 25 years now. So through trial and error, I have a lot of experience in relation to my wave. And what I do, which I may have shared intermittently, but thank you for the direct question, is to just be with the emotions, right? I know that at the low end, I'm seeing a low end perspective. I'm not seeing the full story. And that alone is enough to help me back up or settle down or just be present. And I don't want to run away from those emotions. I don't want to try to be so busy as an MG and cover them up and make myself so busy so I don't see it, right? That, in a sense, that really just brings a drag down on the process I'm going through. It's kind of the worst thing I can do is to cover up or avoid or suppress the emotions. I like to be in a safe place if I'm in a really low wind. I like generally to be alone or at least with friends that really understand me and aren't going to, feel like they need to do something. I just need to monitor my boundaries. I need to go into that space where I can be expressive, whether I need to cry it out, which happens plenty, or maybe beat the pillow in the bedroom. But it's in that low end, what I'm trying to do when I feel those, again, somewhat sense of an overwhelm, like it feels hopeless. And for me, oftentimes in these deep low winds, it absolutely does. I mean, it plays with my gate 47, line 6. I can really feel like it's just pointless. It's futile in that sense. But I have the awareness to know that there's something here for me to learn. I need to feel this perspective. It is half of my equation of my inner truth. And so again, it's not about running away, suppressing, or avoiding. It's about just be present. I know that the wave will move. And so for undefined solar plexus folks like yourself, it can have that same quality. We're getting all these activations right now, but it's temporary in the sense that the planets are moving. They're bringing stimulation in your solar plexus to observe particular perspectives of emotional quality of that gate. And so in that sense, it's tremendously valuable. Even though it can be a little scary, Again, we have the tendency to want to change something or blame it on somebody. But if we're looking externally right now, we're missing the point. Yes, whatever's happening is certainly happening. It is our 3D reality, but how we cope with that and regulate that through our nervous system and our solar plexus is a personal exercise. And finding the spiritual, emotional tranquility, equanimity, and peace, really, even though it can feel so turbulent. And then same at the high end, at the high end, as much as I like the way that feels, I mean, I appreciate those days. I also know that I'm not real clear. I'm too optimistic. I'm going to possibly overcommit, overpromise, overdo, over. And so really it's about just appreciating the movement, knowing that it's moving to clarity. I'm gaining perspective and emotional depth and wisdom over time. So patience is the key, and acceptance, I think, is a key, and just waiting and waiting. That's it, particularly while these planets are all, as I said, they're all moving forward and rapidly through all these gates. We're going to be in a different quality of frequency as we move into the spring equinox, and we'll see what that brings. So now, to me, the key element here is, what are we uncovering in the depths of the emotions and the ocean of Pisces? Through the healing process of the nodal Chiron conjunction, through Pluto in that gate 60, there's things to be uncovered here as we make this traverse through the ups and downs of the solar plexus.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Appreciate you being here and hearing from you as well. Anything else from anyone? Yes, Rachel, please.
Oh, well, first of all, that was just really amazing. Everything that you just said there, Richard, as far as like talking about the emotional wave and your longtime observation of it, and how important it is to like honor that low end of the cycle as being like really important information. And I was thinking that, I mean, I have an open solar plexus, but I have some individual energy there, and so I definitely like to be alone and get into the melancholic, like write a lot of poetry, or even just journal, or do something that's like kind of expressive, meaning like it expresses, like gets out that thing that I'm feeling, and then later I can like use my outer vision and come across it in my environmental authority thing, and it actually does help me to like inform my process style, like decision making. Like to not be afraid to capture those feeling states in some kind of artistic form takes like a lot of courage, like in a certain capacity. I used to feel like, is this worth documenting in any capacity? Like I almost like don't want to document the most horrible shit or the best shit, but it's almost like that's most important to document if we're trying to use it as evidence of like understanding the cycle with your mind, which is, I'm a mental projector, so I'm trying to like work, this is my process. But and so thank you for letting me soundboard. But anyway, I just want to say the one thing I was thinking about also after you were speaking is like, okay, so yeah, we have all this solar plexus bullshit happening, and then we have the Aries energy bringing on that channel of initiation and lighting up like the heart center. And so it's like, what's the purpose of every gate that comes before the one is like that, from that 6th line to like prep for the next thing. So all of this 36 horror is to prep us for what we need to be initiated into.
Yeah. Really, really appreciate everything you were sharing. Absolutely. And great observations. I love hearing your process, and salute you in your efforts there, as you're saying, to document and to be witness and be present. I mean, it really takes effort to be present in that way to such emotional fluctuations. What I also love, when I think of that imagination of Neptune, and again, through, as you're saying, journaling or expressing in some form, the creativity of our imagination from Neptune, it's like it creates a scaffolding. I almost think of it like a spider web. It's not a strong scaffolding. It's an imagination. It's a dream. It's a vision, whatever. But we have that ability with this Sun-Neptune conjunction to build the scaffolding of our imagination. And then we're going to have Saturn pass through there afterwards. And Saturn brings the solidity and the structure, so it can build on that imagination if it's correct, of course. I mean, but the idea of that to me is very stimulating, that it's the Neptunian creative imaginations that have to come first. There has to be the higher knowing vision of truth. And then Saturn can provide its structure building to see how that reality comes into play. And it may not look exactly like the grand vision of the imagination, but there's certainly these two elements, particularly as they sandwich that new moon, these two elements between imagination and structure are bookending the story of the possibility of this lunar cycle. But thank you for that, Rachel. And again, anyone else before we close?
I have to laugh at Rachel, my mental projector friend, because when you talk about documenting, I like go through these periods of just throwing it all away because it's the same documentation. Oh, like I'm bored with myself. I'm bored with the story. The documentation is the same. So it's interesting when she talked about that. And then also like the fear of putting pen to paper and expressing it, and then also the need to do so. I just think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right then. Well, again, thank you guys for being here. So fun to share time with you and take a look at the transits. I wish you a wonderful, watery world of emotions this week. Use those imagination muscles. They're being activated right now. And yeah, we'll see you all next week, or I'll see you on Discord. Thank you so much, and bye for now.